This week, we are diving deeper into some of the governor's wish list from Monday's State of the State address, his final address as governor. And based on what we have seen in the days since, Stitt's call to ban the production and sale of marijuana in the state could be the most contentious. We're online, we read the comments, so let's talk about it here. My guests today are two wonderful people to discuss this right now. Jed Green led the effort to approve medical marijuana back in 2018. He's the director of Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis Action. Jed, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir.
And also Mark Woodward. He's been with the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics since 1995. So you've been a part of, obviously, all the challenges for all the types of things that have come through, and you've been there for the challenge of figuring out how to regulate and how to really uphold the law as it's written here in Oklahoma.
Correct.
Mark, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
You.
Let me start with you, and I'm going to ask you gentlemen the same question to start off with. Why are we here in this point with the governor asking, let's just get rid of this?
Well, from our perspective, from a law enforcement perspective, we saw a large presence of criminal organizations coming to Oklahoma during the pandemic. They used straw owners to get a license within our state to try to get past our residency requirement.
When you say straw owners, I know what you're talking about.
These are people that part of our law says that your license has to be owned by somebody, 75% of it by somebody who's been a 2-year resident. Obviously, that's a problem for a criminal group coming here from Northern California.
Right.
So you had entities step up and say, don't worry about it, we'll find you a 75% owner, you just pay a fee. And so they started getting licensed under somebody else's name that really had nothing to do with the farm, and that allowed these criminal groups to continue to operate. They were already operating on the black market, but they were in places like California and New Mexico and other states, and during the pandemic they came here, set up shop, and continue to work seamlessly, hiding behind a piece of paper that said that some local person is the owner who had a squeaky clean background, paid a small price for a license, and yet the people behind that license are transnational criminal organizations that have been operating in the black market realm for a number of years before Oklahoma even legalized it.
So, Jed, why do you think that we're here with the governor? Because certainly those challenges are challenges that we have covered here at KOCO, and everybody else has been covering them as well. Why do you think that we are at this point?
Well, when we look at this, what we ultimately have is a failure to administrate the laws that are in place. So we got here through State Questions 788, which was not an out-of-state liberal organization. It was Oklahomans, volunteers. It was the first state question that was done by an all-volunteer army. And so that provided funding for education, which to this point is well over $100 million into the Redbud Fund. We also put in place with 788 the residency requirement that Mark, you referred to, that is the backbone of all of these prosecutions. So this state question put the laws in place that actually allowed for the prevention of these type of straw owners to go forward. Now, we have to look at that post-passage. There was talk of a special session to add additional requirements. Our organization stood ready with 200 pages of law ready to go into special session. The House stood ready, the Senate stood ready, the governor did not go into special session. So
and that was Governor Fallon.
That was Governor Fallon, right. That's right, and so we move forward. Now in the spring of that year, a smaller version of that proposal was passed, and in that time we have actually seen robust lawmaking, especially under the leadership of Speaker McCall and Pro Tem Treat. We functionally have all of the laws that we need. With requests from OBN as well as the industry, those straw owner laws were put on the books, and that's something that we supported at the time. The issue here is the state got behind within that first 3 years. Initially, we had a lot of locals come in, but then word got out, and we had a couple of bad actors in the state, some of whom are under federal prosecution right now, who brought in close to 2,000 illegal licenses themselves. These folks were very well connected to the current administration.
Does that track, Mark, what he's saying? That there were a couple people that brought in thousands of...
There have been several entities and individuals that have been indicted by multi-county grand juries for basically, and some of the evidence we found, they were actually during the pandemic advertising on Fujianese, Cantonese, right, Mandarin websites saying, come to Oklahoma, we're an open state, we're not locked down, we'll help get you a license, you pay a fee. Right. So there was kind of basically a red carpet rolled out for criminal organizations to come to Oklahoma.
So, and I mean, we called it the Wild West of weed for a reason, right? I mean, as you said,
Absolutely.
Voters, more than 500,000. In fact, we could put it up on screen. We have 788's voting results from 2018. As you see there, nearly 57% of Oklahomans voted for this, and so it was a big number. But after that, it was how exactly are we going to make it happen? And so I guess my question now, I don't want to focus as much on the past, because the question in front of us now is all right, what's the proper step forward? Because there has been a lot of corrective action taken. I think legislators are trying to get out. There's been some freezing of things, like let's pump the brakes on it. But the governor says now's the time. He says we can't put a Band-Aid on a broken bone. This needs to go away. Is that OBN's position as well?
Well, what the Bureau of Narcotics has been doing since 2021 is we put together full-time marijuana enforcement teams, because we started to recognize the people behind the licenses were not just people who chose not to follow our law. These were people tied to transnational criminal organizations, linked to homicides, extortion, human trafficking, sex trafficking, very dangerous people that we didn't want getting a foothold in our state.
And people that I'm sure you and your volunteers in 2018 didn't want to have anything to do with the efforts that you were wanting to bring into Oklahoma as well.
Yes, that is correct. We included the preventatory measures. The law is there in 788, the residency rule.
All right, so with these new teams, are we making progress? Are we making the kind of progress that has been helpful?
That we have. At the end of 2022, we were at 8,400 marijuana farms. We started putting every single one of them under a microscope, because this law was passed in a way that said within 60 days you have to roll out a license, and essentially if you passed a background and paid $3,000, you got a license. So there was no buildings to inspect. There was no background to do other than the person listed as the owner, and that's usually a guy who's squeaky clean local guy. So it was, here's your license. So we weren't able to vet because there was nothing to vet. We didn't have time to slowly roll this out and really lay down, like some other states, who are the people behind these licenses. Once we started to see the ghost owners and the straw owners, we started requiring them a secondary packet they'd have to fill out with more information on ownership, and then we would call them and we'd say, okay, we're ready to review your packet. You need to come into our office and sit across the table from an agent. 50% of the people beginning in 22, 23, 24, 50% of them said, oh, I didn't realize I had to come talk with an agent. Never mind, I'm withdrawing my registration. That spoke volumes about what was truly behind that.
That tells you everything that you
So we
need to
went
hear.
from nearly 8,400 farms. Today, as of this morning, we're at about 1,453 farms.
Oh, I mean, you just cut it from 8,800 to
well,
1,400.
And when we flip the script, I always tell people we were the joke, the national, Wild West of weed to Oklahoma. Today, we're hearing on underground Chinese websites that they're specifically saying, do not go to Oklahoma because the Bureau of Narcotics is going to put you under a microscope and you're going to go to jail.
But see, Mark, when I hear this, then I think, well, it sounds to me like we are moving in the right direction to get a handle on this. And so is that next step just to ban the whole thing? Is that going to be necessary in Oklahoma when there has been progress like this?
Well, and our director will say the same thing. We're going to enforce the law, the will of the legislature, the governor. Regardless of what the law is, we will enforce it appropriately. We are a public safety agency. But our focus is going to be on those, again, who are not in even trying to do it right with following our laws. And not only are these not small violations, these are major people. Again, we saw a quadruple homicide in Lacey, Oklahoma, and that's one of many homicides linked back to Chinese organized crime. We've had a number of these groups that are tied to human trafficking, sex trafficking, Asian brothels that we've shut down where they were exploiting Asian women to cater to people on these farms. We don't want them getting a foothold in Oklahoma. So whether we get this down to 6 farms or 6,000 farms, we're just asking that you do it right, and if you don't, we're going to investigate and go after them.
So, Jed, instead, obviously, you don't want to see this go to a vote. You don't want Oklahomans to have to do this again because you feel like Oklahomans have already done it. You would also admit, though, that a lot of the things that are happening, and so you are looking for a better way forward yourself. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Are you completely open? Because we heard from that dispensary owner who he said, we understand that there's a lot of bad actors here. We're not one of them. Don't punish us.
Right, absolutely. And that is, that's exactly who we're here to protect. Are those legitimate businesses? Have there been issues? Absolutely, there have been a number of issues, but I think it is lost just how much progress has been made. And I also want to emphasize that when we hear that there were X amount of grow licenses and now there are X amount, we need to understand that not everyone was an illegal operator. I had 3. I surrendered them simply because I decided not to grow. Does that make me a human trafficker? No, it does not. So when we look at those numbers, we have to understand that there are a certain amount that were criminals that have had enforcement actions. It looks like about 400 over the last 3 years. We have to understand that there are those criminals who got the memo and got out of state, as hit and run operations do, but we also have to understand there are folks that succumb to the market and folks that succumb to an incredible amount of bureaucratic load on this industry.
Jed, let me also point this out, though, because there's a lot of people who are doing it right, but there's people at home that are saying, I got dispensaries on every corner in my neighborhood. This isn't what I signed up for. I wasn't expecting this. Is there going to need to be a curtailing of the amount of dispensaries and places that are popping up all over the place? Is that something that you would support?
Well, here's the thing. The market has already worked that out. We look at where we were at, about 2,500 dispensaries, and now we're down well under that. The dispensaries that we see also consolidate. Here's a question I have for the general public, and the question I have for enforcement officers is simply this, and for the governor who said there are more dispensaries than pharmacies by about 500. Consumers purchase on convenience. If we cut this place down, this state down to where there are 500 dispensaries, the reality is for this product, people are not driving 60 miles to go purchase marijuana. They're going to purchase it right around the corner illicitly. Or, and one of our big concerns is, they're going to pick it up from a gas station or online because of the prevalence of marijuana called hemp being sold in gas stations and synthetic THC,
and that's
which we believe is where they should be focusing.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Well, and that's a whole other issue, the synthetic stuff, which, yes, you bring up a good point. Gentlemen, we're over time here, so I thank you for being here. Obviously, this is something that we're going to continue to talk about for a while, and we appreciate your expertise and your experience on this.